Tracy, I just like first off, like starting this interview, I just wanted to like share my thoughts on the document that you had shared with me. I went through that and I just was, I mean, really, it's just so beautifully written and so well constructed. And when I was going through that and all the quotes that I was reading and all the, things that it said about mindfulness and intentions and grounding and all of that, I was just thinking, please sign me up for this program. I want to be a part of this program. It was just so good. I mean, I don't know, like I really don't have words for it. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. And I would love to have you in the program. So if the timing works for you, just come in. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yesterday I was like, I will look at this more seriously. So yeah, very, very just like it touched my heart. So yeah.
Oh, what a nice way for me to start my morning off. I'm happy to hear that. I wasn't sure when I was putting it together because it's meant to go as a companion to the different weeks. So I wasn't sure how it would read just in and of itself. But I did pour my heart into it. So I'm happy to hear that my heart is parent in the document.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's very simple, but it's very, yet very powerful at the same time. All the, things that have been said there. And so, yes, hats off to you.
Thank you.
So, okay, shall we get started with the interview then?
Yes, let's go ahead.
Yes. So, so my first question for you, Tracy, and as like I had also shared that set of questions with you, but like, so I have often come across, people saying about being mindful and, books about being mindful and things of that sort. And this is actually the first time that I have come across something called Beyond Mindfulness. So I would just like to start off this interview knowing what it means, going beyond that and being beyond mindful from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few different dimensions behind the name. And one is with respect to mindfulness and, Coach Arya's philosophy of mindlessness. So mindfulness has become a term that many use to talk about many different types of things, right? From different forms of meditation to, being mindful in the moment. And then, of course, with Coach Arya, and Ram always talks about the no mind approach, right? So going beyond the sensory experience and expanding into this collective consciousness, which is where there isn't the identification with self or even mind, and rather being a part of the universe and being a part of the oneness, I guess I can say. So that was one thought around the Beyond Mindfulness, because I think that in most people's experience, mindfulness is paying close attention, right? Yeah. It's kind of a more focused type of practice. Yeah. And Beyond Mindfulness includes that attention, but includes a lot of expansion as well. Mm. And also embodies a practice that doesn't just apply to meditation or doesn't apply to a sort of concentrated focus, but is something that we would look at intentionally. So kind of looking forward, what are our intentions? How are we going to take this forward? And look at reflectively, and then actively pay attention in the moment to what's happening, not just within or around us, but also how are we engaging with the world? Are we doing it out of ego, or are we doing it out of intention?
Yeah. So just a question, Tracy, which is coming to my mind. is like also if you could like explain mindlessness a little bit here, just for me to, you know, understand it and put this into this particular context.
For sure. So I want to first off say I'm not an expert about that, because I know Ram bases it on some ancient practices that I haven't studied to the same level of depth.
Okay.
But so there's something kind of, what am I trying to say? Let's talk first about what mindfulness is, right? In the term that I would say the traditional term, right?
Yeah.
And that would be paying close attention to either the breath, a sensory experience, or a mantra if you're meditating. So it's a very focused awareness, right? You're staying with almost like a point, and you're staying with that point and meditating. Whereas mindlessness is a different, and Ram has a specific technique that he uses for his meditations, but it's an approach where you're dropping out of the mind, and you're dropping out of, it's basically like a non-dual awareness.
Okay.
So it's basically an understanding that everything that's showing up within our consciousness is a part of our consciousness. So it doesn't matter that you are a separate being, or that this is a different sound, or this is a different object, right? It's all showing up in consciousness. And there is no real separation between me and everything that's happening in my experience. Yeah. And so that's a very simple and very like non-religious way of explaining it, I would say, or not religious, but it's not getting into like maybe the more spiritual aspects, which is that we're all connected, you know, that we're all a part of the universe, all of that. I'm just talking about the practice itself.
Yeah.
Right? And so in like secular practice of mindfulness, for example, this would be known, what Ram terms as mindlessness would be known as non-dual mindfulness.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that clear as mud? Because it's a very hard philosophy to talk about.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Sorry, Tracy.
Yeah, it's complicated to talk about, and it's hard for me to vocalize, because it's something that I have to sit with and reflect a lot upon myself. Yeah. Yeah.
No, but I think that you really explained it in your own manner, and it was I understood some aspects of it, absolutely. And I think that it's a very it's something that you have to really as you said, sit with it and just also feel it to understand it more. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah, that's what I feel. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think when again, terming this beyond mindfulness wasn't just though speaking about that sort of that difference in terms of approach or philosophy, but it also meant, to me anyways, that we're really looking at taking this into all aspects of life, right? So there's people, even including myself, where at one point I would meditate, in the morning and sometimes in the evening, and then I would go about my day. When I was in conflict with someone, all of that meditation didn't help me necessarily in that moment, maybe because it brought me to maybe a bit of a calmer place to begin with. But when my triggers were firing, they were firing, and everything was happening. And so unless I could literally take myself out of that moment and find a bathroom or somewhere and meditate again, the meditation wasn't helping me at that very moment in terms of managing myself in a way that I would feel good about later, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what this is about is really taking this practice, like how, you know, being able to be mindful or aware, let's just drop the mindful, but being able to be aware in the moment, like sensing when the triggers are being activated, when things are bubbling up, and being able to take that pause and then actually being able to relate to the other person out of a space of compassion and out of a space of intention. Like, what do I really want here? Do I really want this to be dividing me further from this person? Or in the end, do I want conflict showing up in my life like this? No matter whether I'm right or wrong, you know, and so being able to stay with that in the moment and act in such a way that one doesn't create any more damage in the experience, and actually acts, I guess, as well. You know, we're not perfect, but being able to act as well as we can, given that situation.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's such a great way to, you know, summarize it. The thing that you just said right now, about compassion and, you know, being and behaving, or like being as compassionate and understanding about where the other person is also coming from. So yes, which brings me to my second question, which is that who do you think is this program for? Who will, you know, sort of get the most out of this or benefit from it? I didn't want to use the word benefit, but just for like the sake of it, what do you think about that?
I would love to think that it would be for anyone that is willing to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that can be someone that's been meditating for 25 years. That can be someone that hasn't meditated at all. There's no, it's not necessary to have an active or even deep practice of meditation when you're coming to the program. It's really just about, am I willing to be vulnerable? Am I going to, you know, bring my authentic self into these conversations? And am I going to reflect after? A big part of it is the reflection. Well, and that's really, I would say, anyone that's, you know, wanting to open up to, I guess, more connection with others and a more intentional practice on a daily basis. Will respond well, I think, to the program, especially, like I said, if they're willing to then do the work as well.
Yeah. Tracy, while I was going through the program and trying to understand what the program is about, it said, and, you know, being mindful also, it's if I'm not wrong, it also means being more aware of, you know, what is like going on inside you and around you. So would you say that this program would, I mean, I don't know, but I would just like to know from you that, would you say that this program would be more suited to people who are more aware, maybe, about themselves, more self-aware, or is that like not a condition which is necessary?
Again, I think it's just as long as someone is wanting to be more self-aware, I don't think they need to be there. Okay. So this is not geared to be, like, it's not like, okay, you have to start off from this point and then we'll move forward. It's really, I feel like the way I would love to see the program is that anyone can come in at their different levels and talk about it. And I think in some ways, people that are more, I don't know, people that are more open to talking about wanting to be more self-aware tend to be more self-aware. So in other words, I mean, the more I sit with myself, the more aware I am of the lack of awareness that I have in certain areas. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And I think that, because when you, as you said, that, when you, and I mean, I'm just saying this because this is also like a part of therapy. And I've been like taking therapy for a while. So and as the more you like sort of sit with your feelings and see, okay, what is this emotion? Where is this coming from? And the more you get to know about all of these things, all of these emotions, all of these feelings, which haven't been there before, and you're suddenly, becoming aware of them. So that makes absolute sense. And I think that this is, for me, I think this is the best part about the program, probably, that you don't need to be anywhere to, start the program. I think that's a very powerful thing. It's sort of an all-encompassing nature, if I can say that. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I'm excited as you say that, because that's my intention for it. Like, I feel like who's to say, and anyway, it's all our own experience of ourselves, right? So who's to say how self-aware anyone is?
Yes.
It's a relationship we have with ourselves, and the awareness comes from us, right?
Yes.
And yes. So
absolutely. Okay. So, Tracy, what is your favorite part of the program and why?
So I think I'll answer this in two different ways. So my favorite part of the program in terms of like a weekly occurrence is the conversations. The conversations are just so amazing. Like I really feel, sorry, there's a siren.
No problem. Take your time. Yeah.
When I come out of the conversations, I'm definitely a different person. I mean, we all evolve anyway, moment to moment, but I feel like something shifts in me in every one of those conversations, just because that's the beauty of the collective, right? It's like we all have these different perceptions, and we all have this unique gift that we bring to the world. And I almost feel like when we can have these like really open and heartfelt conversations, it's like light bouncing off of all these beams, like refracting off of each other.
Yeah.
Because everyone's seeing something in a different way, and they're seeing it in a way that I haven't, and then simply being able to see it that way opens me up to something that I don't think that, I would have opened up to on my own that way. Yeah. So I really think that's my favorite part of the program itself, or those conversations. If we look at it on a weekly basis. Now, my favorite module of the program, like my favorite week, I guess I should say, is the one on compassion and forgiveness.
Okay. And what is it about?
It's literally all about compassion and forgiveness. So it's about being compassionate with others, being compassionate with ourselves, forgiving others, forgiving ourselves. But they're really hard conversations, because I don't think there's very many people in life that haven't been hurt deeply by another human. And so when we start talking about these things, it brings up some raw edges about having compassion for someone that's hurt us, having compassion, or being able to forgive someone that's done us wrong. But And so but then there's also a freedom that comes from being able to do that, right? But it's a really tough conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the part that I love the most. It's the one that really touches my heart the most. And then the other thing is that I think the people that we find the hardest to forgive are ourselves.
Yeah. No doubt about that.
Yeah. And so there's something about hearing these threads that come up with, all different people about what they're holding and then seeing that commonality and being able to kind of embrace the philosophies that we know that are true. Like we all know that, of course we should forgive ourselves. And yes, holding resentment is like poison. Like we know all these things, we know all the quotes, right? But when it comes to actually doing it, it's very difficult. Sometimes not even possible. But I think when you start noticing how it makes not just ourselves suffer, but other people suffer, and you can see that a little more clearly, it makes it opens up the idea of being able to access that really difficult task of of opening our hearts to people that have hurt us, or even ourselves when we feel like we failed ourselves.
Tracy, just a thought. I mean, and I'm not like 100% sure of what I had read, but this one sentence that I remember from a book that I had read by it. So it's called "Maybe You Should Talk to Someone" by Lori Gottlieb, and she is a psychotherapist, and she also like writes a lot. And it said that it's basically therapists and their therapists and the conversations with therapists. So one of the things that it said was you can be compassionate and can have still not forgiven someone. That's what it said. So and that's okay if you don't you don't have to answer this right now or anything. We can always like catch up later whenever. But it sort of stayed with me because I think that in general, when we have these conversations, sometimes people really I think I mean, not to like say that this program or you are saying that, but there is this sort of just this pressure that you have to like you can only be compassionate if you are being forgiving. So just like wanted to know your perspective around this.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm really, really glad that you brought that up, because there's one thing that I think it's important for me to clarify. There isn't ever a should, right? So like everybody, for one, we are the only ones that know what we've gone through. We hold the pain that we've had. It's our prerogative and within our power to forgive or not forgive, right? And there isn't it should happen. Who am I to say that, right? Like I would never define that for another human or anyone, but it's in my experience, and this is just my own experience. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing someone for their behavior. It doesn't mean being a victim. It doesn't mean allowing someone to continue to harm you. Absolutely. We have to have compassion is compassion, right? It doesn't need to be defined as compassion for self or compassion for other. If someone's getting hurt, we don't want that to happen, right? And so forgiveness isn't being a victim in the sense that I'm using this as, or it's not, like I said, pardoning. It's not pardoning someone for what they've done.
Mm.
It's letting go of I don't even want to say the pain, because the pain's going to be there. That hard knot of resentment and judgment and anger that's there, no matter how, what is the word? Justified it might be to be there. In the end, that may not be for me anyways.
Yeah.
Something that is going to let me be at peace. And so if I want to be at peace, right, I will want to work on not dwelling on it, not having that there that I'm fostering or nursing or, making a part of me and my story.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that, let's say I'm talking about another person, that doesn't mean that I'm ever speaking to that person again. Right? We don't need to be, if we aren't going to keep drinking from the same poisonous water, right? So we don't need to have toxic people in our lives. But do we want that toxin to stay within us by continually, working at the feelings in the story around how we've been harmed? Almost like that harm continues.
Yeah. Really interesting answer. Yeah. And Tracy, just I would like to know how do you differentiate between compassion and empathy? Because that is also something that I've always been confused about. So I would like to know from you, because you put things in a very simple manner, and it just it's like, whoa, I didn't think of that. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a difficult distinction for me to express. But the way that I differentiate it is that, so empathy is being able to see from another person's eyes or be in another person's shoes. You can kind of sense what they're feeling, right?
Yeah.
And connect with them that way.
Yeah.
Passion is that, but it's also accompanied by a genuine, heartfelt desire or intention, I guess I should say desire, to have that other person not be suffering anymore. Right? And I'm saying that because I don't want to say help, right? I think that's where compassion sometimes comes in, and it gets confusing with altruism and all of those other things. Sometimes the most compassionate thing to do is to not help another, right? But we can still genuinely hold in our hearts that we don't want to see them in pain anymore, that we want them to be as happy as it's possible for them to be. And I think that's the distinction for me between compassion and empathy.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. So, so Tracy, how does this program fit in with the corporate culture? Because, and why I'm asking this question is because this particular program draws a lot, I think, from spiritual concepts and all of those things and teachings of the Buddha. So I wanted to understand how it sort of aligns with the corporate culture.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, I'll just I'll respond to you by saying I'm not Buddhist. I haven't, and even when it comes to like my meditation practice, I've been meditating, I would still say probably for less than 5 years now. This is a relatively new thing for me in context of the rest of my life where I was very non-mindful, right? There is in the materials, there is definitely some quotes or references to Buddhist texts.
Yeah.
Because they really support this
yeah.
Approach. I mean, this is where this evolved from, and other ancient practices. I'm not even going to begin to try to address those influences because I don't know them. Sorry, just one moment.
Yeah, please.
I'm going like crazy. So, okay, sorry. So in terms of a corporate applicability, I think all of these conversations can like, when we went back to saying this program can be for anyone, I think that it can be for anyone. But again, let's say in a corporate context, it would just need to be for people that are actually interested. Like it wouldn't be like, this wouldn't be a program that I think that you could mandate people to take. It has to be a choice, right? And it has to be something that they would want to do. But by all means, like imagine, I mean, right now we talk about compassionate leadership. We talk about self-awareness, we talk about intentionality. So I think that these would be really powerful conversations in that context, but it would have to be by people that are wanting to have them.
Yeah. Someone who seeks to, come to this program.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if a company were to offer it as a wellness initiative for their employees, and it was something that people could opt in, I think it could be very powerful on that premise.
Yeah. So Tracy, you mentioned something about leadership and and this program connected to that. How do you think somebody who is like in a leadership, in a major leadership role at a global firm, say, or a multinational startup or something like that, would help? How would this program help them? This is just something that came to my mind right now, so I thought I'll ask.
Yeah. So I think, again, like looking at approaching like intentionality. So the different weeks we go through, it's like the first one's about intentions. The next one is really about self-awareness, right? Like really becoming aware of everything that's happening, including emotions. We talk a lot about emotions. The third week is autonomy. It's about taking responsibility, really, right? So that's, personal leadership, I think, right there. It's about making choices and being responsible for our choices and not identifying, our emotional reactions or triggers, not identifying them with what someone else is doing with us, and understanding that we're reacting how we're reacting. We can choose how that will happen, even though we can't, what's coming at us isn't our choice, but how we respond to it is.
Yeah.
And then of course, compassion, right? Compassion for anyone that's in a role where they're leading is key, especially in such a competitive world.
Yeah.
And especially where people can be cutthroat, right?
Yes.
And then the fifth week, we talk about who am I? And it's really about asking these questions of, who am I really? am I, okay, so, maybe I'm a CEO and maybe I'm a mother and maybe I'm all of these things, but is that all I am? What else am I? Right?
Yes.
And kind of really trying to break down that separation that we tend to, our egos insert between us and the rest of the world by these identifications of like the labels that we have or the past experience that we have, you know, the conditioning that we have. And then the last one is all about creativity. It's all about the, you know, it's all about creativity, generosity, humility, kind of embracing the collective. So I'm biased, but I feel like for someone that's in that type of a role, I think that these conversations could be very empowering, just for them personally, you know, with everything that's, when you have a high pressure environment, like these are tools that we are able to develop in terms of being able to be more reflective and be more aware.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just like to say that the more you are talking about the program, the more I'm getting pulled towards joining it as soon as possible. Oh God. But
Amazing.
yes. So Tracy, yes. So just like, so yeah. So one of the things that came to my mind while reading the program was like, a lot of the times we go into an overthinking spiral, or we, you know, second guess our intentions a lot. So what are your thoughts about that, and how do you think that this program, you know, sort of helps with that aspect?
That's an excellent question, because one of the things that I really had to define for myself is like the difference between reflection and rumination. So overthinking is rumination, right? Like it's like, for me anyways, I'm something will happen and I get stuck with it and I think about it again and again and again. And like, that's not, or I'm anticipating something will happen. I'm planning, you know, and I'm overthinking that.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference between, I think there's a difference between intentionality, where we really identify what's deeply important to us and set an intention of how we are going to show up in the world that day. You know, what part of us we want to access, what part of us we want to anchor to. So for me, some days it's like patience, you know, or compassion or love, or courage. So it's like, depending on what's coming, you know, towards me that day. And then I'm able to anchor to that. That's different from planning. And I say planning because planning is something for me that's really masking worry, you know, where I'm taking a situation and I'm analyzing it and I'm thinking of all the ways that I'm going to respond. Let's say a conversation, all the things that I'm going to say, I'm rehearsing it and rehearsing what the other person's going to say back. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you go into the conversation and you've forgotten all of it and you come out of it and you're like, why didn't I say that? Right.
Yeah.
That's different from intentionality. Intentionality is going into the conversation, and just as you're about to let someone have it, remembering, oh, I said I was going to work, you know, respond out of love to this person. Is this being loving? You know, and then even finding a way to say to someone what we need to say. Maybe they have wronged us. Maybe there is something that we need to say that's difficult, you know. But when we're bringing those words forth from a loving space, as opposed to an angry space, even if that anger is there, it's a very different conversation.
Yeah.
And then it's the same with reflection. So things will happen. Maybe we have the best of intentions. Maybe we've tried to anchor to the intentions and we've still reacted in a way that we don't feel good about, you know? So then there's a difference between giving it a little bit of space, and then maybe at the end of the day, sitting down. However, people reflect differently. Some people like to speak out loud. Some people like to journal, you know, some people like to record themselves. For me, I like to journal.
Yeah.
And so maybe taking that and writing about it and kind of working through what happened and what didn't happen and what I can learn from it is very different from spending my day thinking about the conversation, muttering to myself, you know, getting caught up in all the things that I should have done, or that the other person should have done. That is rumination.
Okay. So Tracy, so are there any sort of techniques, specific techniques or tools that are, you know, provided in this program or introduced in this program which sort of help with this aspect?
That's a good question. So what's provided in this program is the reading that you've seen. So that there's writings that would go out before we meet. That'll provide a base for people to talk about. And then there's reflection questions that people can choose to reflect on. But in terms of the tools themselves, right? This is again coaching as well. Yeah. So it's for people to identify what their own tools are. What works for me, like I said, I prefer to reflect by using a journal, you know, and maybe my intention is going to be different from someone else. And maybe my way of noticing what's happening with my body in the moment is going to be different from someone else.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe the way of me being able to step back a little and kind of take a breath and work on, you know, releasing some of the tension in my body, so I don't want to jump on the other person and throttle them. That's going to be different from someone else. So I guess that's what I'm saying, is that's where the coaching aspect of it comes in, because we're all there and we're all talking, we're all identifying kind of what works for us, and leaving those conversations with ideas of how to move forward based on what's come up for us as we've spoken about it.
So if I could just like say it in how I have understood it. Empowering people and just, you know, making them aware, or giving them providing them an awareness, or bringing them to an awareness about what works best for them in terms of reflection.
Essentially, I guess I would almost say like holding the space for people to develop their own awareness around that. About what works best for them in three areas: in intentions, in self-awareness, like in the moment. We call it reflection and action in the program, right? So it's like right in that moment, being able to reflect on what's happening, and then make a choice, you know, from there. And then reflection after action. So being able to reflect on it after the fact and kind of look at what happened and what didn't, what I would like to work differently. Maybe that changes an intention, right? Or maybe that,
yeah. Amazing. And yes. So one of the things that I also wanted to ask was that, you know, with the help of this program, so many of the times there are, you know, unconscious intentions maybe, or things within us which may be guiding us somewhere or taking us somewhere. So with the help of this program, can we become more aware of them? And if that does happen, how does it happen?
Yeah. Well, yes, I would love. I'll speak for myself. So these approaches help me become more aware of, what that unconscious intent is. Like everything motivates us, right? There's always something that's motivating us towards what we do.
Yeah.
And so I find that I being reflective and by practicing meditation, like there's lots of areas where it's helped me recognize that I'm acting in this way because it's more important for me to be right than it is for me to be loving, in that moment. And then I think, is that what I want? Do I really want to be right now? maybe that's what I want maybe at this moment because I'm angry, but is that what I want overall? And so, yes, I think, I forgot the question now, but you were asking, how we become more aware of these unconscious intentions. Yeah. I think it's really just by starting to examine ourselves, right? By starting to actually like explore, and part of the program is being able to sit with emotions and explore emotions. And so becoming aware of those feelings as they come up, I think also makes us more aware, because then you have that body awareness where you're like, oh, this is happening. Like I'm feeling, I'm feeling my hands shaking and like the heat rushing to my head, and like my throat's tensing up because I'm wanting to say something, Yeah. When you can become aware of that before the words come flying out at someone, that's amazing. That's, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds so, even talking about it feels so freeing in a sense, and so important to, have that sort of awareness before something comes, as you said, flying out of your mouth. Yeah, absolutely. So, Tracy, oh God, I'm just like being mindful of the time also here. So yeah. So another thing that I wanted to ask you was, the program mentions pausing and reflecting about what our truest intention is before like we react to something. But that it's not important to make this a cognitive process. So I just really wanted to understand what that means, and if you could sort of elaborate on that aspect a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Essentially, it's around when we get caught up in our head, right? We can reason our ways into and out of everything, right? Think of the amount of times that we can come up with excuses for like shutting our alarm off in the morning, just such a minor level, right? Yeah. So when it's cognitive, like, for example, yesterday I was triggered by something and I was fully in reactive mode. And I'm wanting to send a text about the way that I was feeling, right? And I knew that was a bad idea. And yet my mind was still trying to convince me that I should do it. And all the reasons why, right? No, you need to say this. It's important that this gets said. If you don't do it now, you're not going to say it, et cetera, et cetera. So there was all this reasoning here as to why I should move forward with this. And so if I thought about my intention just as like cognitively, right? Perhaps I would then identify my intention in that moment to explain myself. To share how something had bothered me or hurt me. Yeah. But when I then am able to sit back and really like drop into my heart space and think about, what do I really want here? Is it really that important that the funny thing is what I was reacting to was a text in the first place. And so is it really that important that I respond in kind and then drop that on someone else to read this emotional text? Or can I wait and have a conversation and say all the things that I want to say, but with love, And so that's where I think coming out of just cognitive thinking and coming into loving thought. and this love doesn't, this love isn't, it includes love for self as well. Because in the end, had I taken that response, I also would have hurt myself in the end, right? I would have regretted it for sure.
Yeah.
It would have created further conflict. And as it turned out, I had misread the thing to begin with, so that's where that response, I think that loving response, can be more intentional.
Yeah. And I'm just like, glad that not glad, I mean, it's just such an important thing to remember, that love is not only about, it's also for your own self, because it will, later on it might hurt you or bring you resentment or any sort of other feelings. So yeah, that's such an important thing. So yeah. So Tracy, what does this program say or like offer about paying attention to our intentions more closely and sort of more carefully?
Yeah. Well, that's more important, I would say, than setting an intention to begin with. Because think of the amount of times that we'll have an intention to do something and we don't, and then there's the thought of failing. There's this feeling of I won't be able to see this through, or I can't commit to this, or I don't know. Like a lot of the times when we talk about intentions, when we're not being intentional about them, it'll be like, yeah, but I didn't mean to do that. I didn't intend to do that. That wasn't my intention, right?
Yeah.
And so intentions mean nothing. It's like that saying, trying isn't doing, right? They mean nothing unless we're intentional. So that's where it's paying attention in that moment. It's, thinking about, where do I want to be coming from here? And is that where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And the only tool for that is practice.
Yeah.
It's literally about recognizing, probably, oftentimes after the fact, when it didn't go the way we wanted to, and recognizing what happened and why it happened and what I was feeling at the moment. And then maybe setting another intention, like, okay, the next time that happens, that I feel that way, what can I do? How can I pause? How can I, what can I change? What can I do differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And how does this program like align with the idea of coaching?
I think it aligns. I can't think of a way that it doesn't align with coaching. Let's put it that way. So it's about intention. It's about actually thinking about what we want, in a positive manner and working towards it. That's coaching.
Yeah.
It's about awareness. It's about being present, about being in the moment. It's about connecting to others. It's about acting compassionately. And it's about, asking ourselves questions.
Yeah.
And being open to possibility.
Yeah. That's like the best answer. And yes. So just like one or two more questions, Tracy, and then I will like just, yeah. So what yeah, in many situations, it can be challenging to avoid getting attached to the outcome. And so how does the program, help in sort of overcoming that expectation? Because like a lot of the times that expectation is, driving us. So yeah.
Yeah. I think like what my intention is with the program, by talking a lot about intention and talking a lot about like anchoring to something within us, that's avoiding this attachment to outcome. Because when we attach to a specific outcome, first of all, we're operating out of an order to. So it's like we're not necessarily accessing that pure part of ourselves when we're thinking, I'm doing this because I want this. I'm being compassionate because I want this. I'm being intentional because I want this, right? Yeah. It changes things when we insert that because. Yeah. And it becomes a very practical thing. And if we don't see results, it becomes, let's put it this way, it becomes extrinsic motivation as opposed to intrinsic. And I think what this is really about is that intrinsic motivation. And then the other thing about being attached to an outcome is it's very limiting, because what if you're just looking for this and you have this available?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Tracy, just one more thing, I think. Sure. Yeah. I don't know if you were talking about this question, because you had on that sheet, you had made a comment about like 2 of the questions. So I will just ask and then you can like tell me. So some of the details of the program resonate closely with the conversations in therapy. So like how is this program, different from that? Or are there any differences from therapy and what this program offers?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I have 2 things that are bubbling up in me. So number one is, okay, I'll address the latter part of your question first. This program is not in any way intended to replace or be therapeutic in the sense of therapy, right? Okay. So if people are dealing with issues that they need to see a therapist on, they should see a therapist. And if they're seeing a therapist, it would be good to, as always, when you have a therapist, let them know when you're going to be participating in these types of programs, right? Having said that, one of the things that I find interesting is that we now think that conversations that have to do with emotions belong in a therapeutic space. And it's just so interesting to me that, because what we're doing here, we're not talking about past experience. We're not getting into trauma. If someone's experienced trauma, then that is something that they should see a trauma specialist on, right? We're not looking at healing the past here. We're looking at being intentional. We're looking at being more self-aware, and we're looking at being more compassionate and approaching the world in that way. And getting in touch with our emotions. Yeah. And it's really interesting. And I do recognize that if someone has experienced deep trauma, then getting in touch with their emotions may be something that needs to happen under the umbrella of therapy. I'm not denying that. Yeah. But I think on it, when we're having these conversations and it doesn't fall under that scope, right? Yeah. Then there's no reason that, conversations around emotions, or even, sitting with your emotions and kind of learning how to embrace the energies of them, needs to happen under therapy. Yeah. It's a part of being human, Yeah. So, but again, like it's similar, like if you're training, let's say for a marathon and you've suffered an injury, you want to go to your doctor and get cleared that you're going to be okay to train. Yes. So that's the difference where I think that we want to be careful about that approach in terms of, like I said, if somebody's has, depression or like debilitating anxiety, they're going to want to talk to their therapist first and maybe let them know a little more about the program before they come in.
Yeah. Sure. Amazing, Tracy. I mean, I just had such a great time during this interview, and I couldn't have imagined your answers were absolutely just a different perspective altogether, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this one. And I have also got this huge pull towards the program. I would just like to say that again. So hopefully you would see me there sometime. So yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you so much for taking out this time. And I would really love for you to, also go through what I write about this interview in whatever shape and manner. If you could just go through it, give your inputs and suggestions, that would be great. And yeah, just thank you. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. It's a great conversation.
Yes.
And I hope to see you there.
Yes, absolutely. And I would definitely want to, have sometime more conversations about this program or anything else, and just be in touch. So yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. See you. Bye.